Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of our very own fee-only certified financial planners. Please note this podcast is intended for educational purposes and should not be considered financial or investment advice, as we do not know all the variables to one's personal situation when answering a question. Before we jump into today's question, a shout out to our extraordinary YFP financial planning team that makes this segment possible. Your Financial Pharmacist offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to pay off your student loans, make the right investment decisions, or simply build a solid financial plan, we'll help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. Okay, this week's question comes from a member of the YFP Facebook group. And the question is, any suggestions on high yield savings accounts with the best interest rates? Tim Baker, probably not the most exciting time right now for interest rates on high yield savings accounts, but nonetheless, a good question and something to be thinking about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So when I started working with clients on comprehensive financial planning, this was always one of the things that's like, where is actually the best place to put like an emergency fund? Because again, the purpose of the emergency fund is really not to earn money, and to get interest or whatever. It's really to be there in case, it hits the fan. But at the same time, like if there is a possibility for us to squeeze out a little yield, like, I'm all about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I would first and foremost say that this is not an endorsement of any of these institutions. These are just things that I've kind of stumbled across, over the years, and I've either used personally or I've evaluated. So I would say, Tim, that in my estimation, the three that I typically see most often from, hey, what are some high yield savings accounts that are decent to use? I've made it known that I'm a big proponent of Ally in terms of my own personal use.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the interest rates right now are holding about at 0.5%. I think they were as high as 2.25%, or even higher than that, a couple years ago for their high yield savings accounts. I think of like ease of use and website and app. I've been really pleased with them. Even their checking account, I think, has a 0.1 savings rate, which is kind of unheard of.
Yep.
The other two that I typically come across most often is Marcus by Goldman Sachs and the Capital One 360. And I think Marcus is maybe at 0.5% these days. Capital One fluctuates. Sometimes it's higher, but I think right now it's at like 0.4%. I know some of these other banks like CIT Bank is been in the mix. Citibank,
Mm-hmm.
they have a high yield account. And the idea is, again, for use of these accounts, can we squeeze a little bit of yield where you're not getting pennies, deposited into your account every month? It's, hopefully something that has a few dollars to it. But I think, Tim, probably the thing that I would ask is, again, the question here is like, what are the best interest rates? And I would say I wouldn't make the decision based on the best interest rates, which sounds a little crazy. But to me, I think the questions I would ask is like, is there a minimum balance? So for some of these banks, to get these deals, you have to have, $100 or something always in the account. Are there transaction fees to like move money around, or is there a monthly fee? You typically see monthly fees more with like business accounts,
Mm-hmm.
but some consumer accounts can have them. And then the other question I want to ask is like, is this an introductory rate? Meaning, are you using this rate to kind of pull me in, and then it goes from 1% to 0.1%, sometime in the future? So, and then again, obviously, like, what is the interest rate? And a lot of the banks that I've kind of mentioned here, they've always kind of been in the mix more or less. You typically, if you find an outlier, there's typically a catch of they're either trying to kind of go the Amazon route and grow market share, to like tweak something where either the deal's not that, they have you, the deal's not that good, or they're monetizing you in some other way.
Yeah.
Or, or for the most part, again, most of them, they're going to be guided by whatever, the Fed rate is, and then based on that. So I put more emphasis on finding the best fit you from an interface perspective, since most of these banks, not all of them, but most of these banks may not have a brick and mortar presence, making sure that kind of, website is easy to use, app is easy to use. If you call them, they're ready to help you. So those would be the things that I would evaluate. And it would be less about fee or the interest rate and more about some of those kind of underlying things that you would get from a banking relationship.
Yeah, great stuff, Tim. And you and I have both publicly professed our experience and voted confidence in Ally, but worth reinforcing that we're, not suggesting that is the only option. As you mentioned, there's several others that are out there, but rates can and will change, right? So I think that's an important reminder
Yeah.
that, as long as they're in the mix, I think it's all of those other things that really do matter. And one of the things you and I have talked about that we really like about Ally, which is certainly something you can do with other accounts as well, is the ease of setting up multiple savings accounts that are tied to a checking account, right? You helped Jess and I do this, several years ago when we started working with you on the financial planning. But, we talk often about intentionality behind the goals. And one way of doing that is by naming the goal and naming the account for the goal of which you're trying to save, right? So that could be an emergency fund, that could be a down payment on a home or investment property. It could be saving up for a vacation. The list goes on, right, of what those goals can be. But the power that comes from having an account with that goal named, and even if that starts as a zero and slowly grows, that's that constant visual reminder of what you're striving towards. And I think a savings account and a system that you have wherever you're banking that allows you to do that, and that functionality can be really powerful as well towards achieving those goals.
Yeah, and even not to turn this into like an Ally commercial, but even Ally has changed a lot of their interface over the and I kind of want to take credit because I think we've directed people to Ally just because of that. But like some people get nauseous when they look at all the different accounts that we say, hey, have a home maintenance account or have a travel account.
Mm-hmm.
But now you can actually have sub accounts. So you can have
Yep.
one high yield savings account that if there's 50 grand in there, 25 of that is for your emergency fund.
Yep.
And then the other 25 might be, divided up between travel and, home maintenance or car maintenance and things like that. So yeah, I mean, and I think they've gone away from, overdraft fees, which is a big thing that's going on now. One of the cool things about the sub accounts is that you can actually, put a goal. So like, let's pretend that you want to take a trip to Napa Valley and you think that's going to cost you $3,000 or $4,000, whatever. You can put that as a goal, and then what the timeline is. So then you can track your progress over time. Which again, I think it goes back to the whole intentionality thing. So they're trying to. I look at Ally, and I'm not sure what some of the other banks are doing, but I think they're trying to factor in some of the behavioral things that are really important with regard to how we can get money out of kind of our everyday check-in and into
Mm-hmm.
these goals that are hopefully very much tied to what is a wealthy life for you. Like, tie the savings to what your goals are and be super intentional with that. So I'm a big proponent of that.
So this question is just really one of the many questions and discussions that are going on daily and certainly throughout the week in the YFP Facebook group. So if you're not yet a part of that community, over 7,000 pharmacists that are in that Facebook group and community, helping one another, encouraging one another, answering questions, make sure to check out that group and join. We'll link to that in the show notes. And if you have a question that you would like to have featured on an upcoming episode, please go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask YFP. Or you can send us that question via email at info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Have a great rest of your week.